Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gatel Sear, and I'm the State Advocacy Vice Chair. And welcome to Part 3 of Legislative Analysis Basics, Hands-on Learning. This is the third in our three-part series, and I'm delighted that so many of you are here today. I know a number of you attended either Parts 1 or Part 2 or both and this session, which is great. The goal of this session is to review some of the key concepts that we covered in parts 1 and 2, and then to really open it up to a conversation among our four speakers, whom I will introduce in a moment, who are our experts in this area, and all of you who have done some of this work before, have dived in a little bit, doing the homework we recommended in the last session, and just answer questions and work through some of the content in real time. So, and quite frankly, this is a recruiting effort. We really need more people to be parts of our issue teams. And so we're hoping that this series and especially this session really engage you and give you the confidence to get started. Emra is running the slides. Would you just move on to slide 2? Okay, thank you. These are, I'm sure, all familiar folks to those of you who've attended any of our sessions or been involved in any of our work. Carol Rowe, from our Northern Arizona. I'm sorry, is that right, Carol? Northern Arizona?
It's Central Yavapai County.
Central, CYC. I'm sorry.
It's the
I
north, but not quite that north.
I know Metro Phoenix, and then I'm kind of lost. Cindy Walsh, who is Metro Phoenix, Emra Muslim, Metro Phoenix, Keisha Mohan, who's Metro Phoenix. Carol, Cindy, Emra, and Keisha have been working heavily in the voting rights, on the voting rights issue
Mhm.
teams. So they have, among them, a vast amount of knowledge in the weeds. So their expertise is valued and is why they're presenting today. You can move on to the next slide, Emra. So the objectives today and the agenda is to just practice what you've done before. And if you haven't done it before, start practicing now. And with a real focus on our end game, which is taking all the work we have done in analyzing a bill and then using that information to do a call to action for our members or the public to write testimony on that particular piece of legislation to present to the committee that is holding a hearing. We're going to go through some of the resources again, the most critical resources that many of you have used or have heard about. Again, the tracker, the way we monitor and manage all the bills, our checklist, the way that the format, the template we use for analyzing our bills, and then all the various instruction documents that we have. But a lot of today is going to be sharing best practices and lessons learned by our speakers and hopefully by some of you who have, again, either done this work before and/or done some of the homework that we assigned in the last session. And again, as I mentioned, this is a please join an issue team. That is our beginning and our final rallying cry because we do need more members. So I think I have one more slide, Emra, yes, okay. So previously, for those of you who didn't attend or who just want a little refresher, this is what we did in parts 1 and parts 2. And I have linked here both the slides and the recording of both of those sessions for those of you who didn't attend or if you did and want to look at the slides again and look at the recording. And I will, after this program, send out any links to all of you so that I'm not going to put them in the chat because I know it's hard to sort of navigate listening and copying and pasting at the same time, at least for me. I don't know about you guys. So I promise to send you any links afterwards. The speakers today, I think, would prefer if you have a question to put it in the chat. Keisha, could you check, or Emma, I didn't check. I forgot to check whether the chat's open for everybody. Let's just make sure it is. And
Yeah, it
then,
should be no.
okay, very good, thank you. Okay, so then I am happily going to turn the program over to, I believe Emma is starting.
Yep, thanks, Gatel.
Thank
So
you.
this is a refresher of the legislative calendar. And so the legislative session starts this Monday. However, pre-filing bills have started since November. And while the legislature cannot do anything directly with those pre-filed bills until Monday, it is a sort of precursor to what the legislature is going to be focusing on. What are the issues that they are interested in tackling this session? And another key date is February 20th, which is the last day for consideration of bills in the original chamber. So, as you may recall, the bill goes through a rinse and repeat cycle through the two chambers. And so, if a bill is originating in the House, the last day for it to be heard in the House is February 20th, and vice versa for Senate. And then after that is crossover week, which all the bills from the one chamber will cross over to the other. And then the bill repeats its cycle in the second chamber. And the session must be at least 100 days, so ideally by April 25th. However, they cannot adjourn until the budget is passed, and that budget has a deadline by June 30th. All right, so now we will be going live, and I will be showing the tracker, which is our main tool for legislative analysis teams. And so, as you may see, we have already started putting in bills that have been pre-filed that are related to our league priorities and positions. And we will go to this example of SB 1057, which our wonderful member Carol has taken on. And Carol can talk more about the checklist and her process.
Okay, good morning. Yeah, this is the checklist for 1057. And can you scroll down just a little bit on it? This is the first thing you do is you do the key provisions of the bill. And what I do is I go look at the bill and I'm looking for the red lines and the blue lettering, and that's what's changed. And then I basically cut and paste and put it in there saying this is what he's doing. This is what the bill wants to do. Yeah, scroll down just a little bit more. There you go. And then I do a little summary. The bill repeals the existing section of the statute and replaces it with this comprehensive. So I happen to know that he did this last year. So although you wouldn't know that because you'd be new, but what I do is I go to the tracker for 2025 and I put in, I do a command search and I search on Senator Finchen's name, and I come up with bills that are identical to this one. For 2025, it's SB 1123, and 2022 was SB 1120. So he's done this several times. And there is the rumor that he had a financial interest in the company that he would provide the paper. Of course, he denied this. So, and then I do the analysis. And since I've already done the analysis, I just look at what I'd done previously and do some cut and paste and kind of clean it up a little bit and add a few remarks and take out. So anyway, mostly I cut and paste from what I researched before because I've already done this. And you will find that happens with a lot of legislation. The first place you want to go is the previous year, and then search either on the legislator's name or the topic, like paper ballots or that sort of thing. And you'll see what they've introduced before, and it helps in your analysis because they've done this before and somebody's already done the analysis. So you can combine what has already been done before. It saves you a lot of time because this year we're going to be very, very busy. They've already brought 4 bills to the committee that they're going to do a hearing on Monday. So anyway, okay, scroll down just a little bit. And I do pros and cons, and then some of this I don't fill out because it's to me it's obvious what the consequences are. The cost of running the elections using this paper, the analysis, I say go see pros and cons. And then I went and did I searched for the governor's veto. And the way you do that is you go to the legislative site, bills, governor's letters, and then you scroll down and you can find her veto. And I include that for friendly or persuadable legislators to remind them that the governor's already vetoed and this was her reasoning. So again, talking points, the bill, and this is a quote from Cindy, this bill's a solution in search of a problem. The current ballot paper has been effectively used in the past. So, and then you take all this information and you put it in the call to action. Now you have to abbreviate it. So what I did is I did a little summary of what the bill said, and then I did the arguments against. Now this call to action goes out to our members and they can use it to do the request to speak or just to contact their legislators and say, look at this bill. Why are you supporting this? So in a nutshell, that's what I do. It's most of the legislation that we see has been done before. So like I said, my first place to go is previous years, see what's been done before, and then I combined the analysis. Oh, can I provide the link to the governor veto? Yes, or Jatel can do that. Anyway, so I hope that makes sense. So anybody have any questions? I'm sure there's lots of questions. Should I look at the chat?
Carol, I just put a few things in there. Yeah, some people asking for links from the first slide. So I can do that. I'll take care of putting the links in.
Okay, yeah.
Well, one of the things I want to jump in and add too is that as we look at the bit, know that the committees are meeting and we have the agenda and know what bills are going to be covered in that meeting. We as a group, as a voting rights group, as an example, meet and we talk about those bills and which ones we have policies on. And then as a team, we distribute those bills for us to each to work on.
Right.
And what we're going to do. So in this exercise, we got to pick what we were working on, but we didn't know when it was going to be heard or if it's going to be heard. This one is going to be heard in that committee, by the way, and that is meeting. It's so some of the work that Carol's describing is done in the committee before we, as team members, pick out what we're going to work on and then work on it. And that takes away some of the work gets spread out. And that's why we're rallying and recruiting all of you to help, because just like anything else, the more people that we have that are involved and engaged, the easier the amount of work is going to be.
Yeah, it's another source I also use is I just Googled some of the information because that's where sources like the Arizona Mirror and different publications, they will have they might have articles discussing it too. You have to be careful on those because some of them have a bias, so you want to make sure you're not biased, but that's another place. But yeah, what we do all this, and then Cindy takes this, I forgot to say this, Cindy takes this information and does a testimony and sends it to the committee. So it's not hard. And the committee, when we meet, we discuss what we found and we say, well, did you think of this? And we go, no, I didn't think about that. And then we add that. So it's very much a group, and it's certainly not a critical. We're not criticizing. I mean, you're writing. Jatel is the best editor in the world, I might add. She'll fix any sentence. But anyway, it's not critical. We're not criticizing your writing. We're just trying to get the best analysis, because it does go to a testimony and it does go to a call to action. And the call to actions, I'm not sure, Jatel knows about those. I think they're sent out, and then the members, I'm not sure when they're sent out. But anyway, that's the most important, is the testimony and the call to action. So you do the analysis, and then they take that information and do testimony and call to action. Now, one of our members did Gail did one of the other ones. She did HB 2001. And I was going to have Gail talk about what she did.
As Carol said, I take the checklist and I read through the checklist to familiarize it. And my role and goal is to take all of that and put it into one-page summary, because we know that the people on the committee are not going to read anything that's much longer than a page, one. And two, if we have a volunteer lobbyist who's going to be providing oral testimony at the committee hearing, which we have done in the past on occasion, you only have about a minute and a half to speak. And so it needs to be something that can be read in about a minute and a half, and they'll stop you. So we try and keep it concise and to summarize it and put it in, I hope, plain language. And as Carol said, so this is an example that's on the screen, and I made up the date of the committee hearing. Who knows when this is going to actually be? I didn't know the Senate was meeting. So I state what the policy is from our policies and why we are speaking, what gives us the authority to speak. That's usually in the first paragraph. Then I'll do a little bit of something about the bill, because I have a strong feeling that not every one of the legislatures reads all of the bills before they get into these committee hearings. So they need a thumbnail sketch of what it is. And then I generally will say what the position is. And in this case, we're looking at the expense and the features of the paper that they're asking for. And when the bill was first introduced in 2022, we did an analysis of cost per page and all that kind of jazz. Well, I didn't do that anymore because I don't know if those numbers are still accurate, so I didn't want to use those. And then our closing and why we think you should vote no on this. And I included that statement from the House veto bill as well, just because I think it's strong. This is not Moni nor the last that uses the phrase that this is a solution in search of a problem, because it's one of my favorite phrases. Anyway, that's it. And then we send those to every committee member on the committee that's going to be there. And I send them also to the state staff members for the minority committee, the minority party. And they help us get these read into testimony. And if you scan down to the bottom too, please, Emra, of the letter, we're asking that they read these testimonies into the record so that we will have the opportunity to be on the record for where we stand, so that if we need to take any further action, we have a position that's already been, that's it. And we do that. We don't do it for every bill, we just do it for the ones that we have the strongest stance on. But that's all determined. All of this is determined in our committee meeting and the weekly meetings that we have prior. As soon as we get the agendas, then we know what's going to be heard, and then we meet and figure out how we're going to approach them. Back to Carol.
Carol, before you start again, may I just interject and answer a question?
Okay, yes, that would be good.
And also just to pick up on what Cindy said, this group here that's presenting, they're all active members of the voting rights issue team. The other issue teams, some of them work differently. They don't necessarily meet every week. They have a different methodology for how they identify bills. So, but knowing what the voting rights issue team is doing is probably is valuable to everybody, because it is the biggest issue team and it deals with the most bills. There was a question, and this came up earlier also about RTS and when to RTS, and because there is a committee meetings this week already, which is unusual. The legislature starts on Monday. Since it's not wasn't an election year, they weren't seating anybody. That's probably why they felt they could just dive right into hearings as of Monday. But the question that someone asked in the chat was, if they're coming before a committee, when can you RTS, and when would we typically do call to action? So we were caught a little short on this one because we did not anticipate, we just found out yesterday that some of these bills were going to be heard on, it's a Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember the voting rights ones, but it gave us very little notice. Typically during the legislative session, we send out a communication through Club Express to everybody who's subscribed to our newsletter, whether you're a member or not a member, through Club Express with our calls to action. We also send it out, I think every week, Emma, correct me if I'm wrong, through League in Action to our supporters. And the RTS window is such that it's only open from the moment it gets on an agenda, which could be as late as the Friday before the following week, which is, I think, what happened this time. And then as soon as the hearing is over, I think, no, I think it's actually an hour before the hearing starts, I believe. It's the end point. You can't RTS again. So you may have a week, but you may only have a weekend to get that done. So at this point, I have to say that if you're interested in the voting rights bills, you should probably look at the tracker. And and if you have an RTS account, go in and, state your opinion about it, because I don't know that we're going to get a call to action newsletter out tomorrow. Anyway, sorry, very long-winded, but I wanted to make sure I got that in. And then I'll keep monitoring the chat, Carol.
Okay, yeah,
You're back. Go
There's a
ahead.
couple, there's a couple questions in there now from Ann and Tina, if you want to look, if you want to respond to those, Gatel.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So the question from Anne, I know, Anne, you're on the education issue team. So if you're on an issue team, yes, if you see a proposed bill that is not on the tracking sheet, yes, please add it. Um, Yes, no, that's absolutely fine. And if you know how to do that, if you know how to use the automated script, absolutely go ahead and do that. We do have a intern assigned to each of the issue teams, at least one, if not two. And if the issue team so chooses to have the interns do that, that's great. I will tell you the intern for the education issue team is relatively new, so she may not be able to do that yet. So absolutely, if you know how to do it and want to do it, I, you can talk to Tina because she's the issue team lead in education, but I can't imagine that she wouldn't want you to do it. And Tina said, asked if we want one team lead editing the tracking sheet. Tina, that's really up to you. In voting rights, a bunch of different people do it. In some issue teams, just the intern does it, or one person does it if they want to. If you've got somebody who really likes to do that and likes to monitor the bills, that is absolutely up to you. Whatever is the best way to do it. And we do do a call to action through League in Action, as well as the newsletter, because the newsletter goes out to about 1,200 people. The number of messages that go out through League in Action, only Emma knows the answer to that. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I believe Anne's question is related to next week's hearing and if we're able to do a League in Action instead of a newsletter. That's the way at least I interpreted it.
Oh,
And I know that like we haven't completed all of the checklists for all of the bills getting heard. But again, that's up to Gatel and Penny as advocacy chairs if we're going to do one.
yeah, and I sent you a list earlier about the other one, so I guess it's conceivable we can pull something together quickly by, I guess, tomorrow, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to make a commitment. Um, Okay, so I saw Anne's
The
response.
good,
Okay.
let me jump in a second. The good news is if we don't have a position for the bills for this hearing, we either get them later when they're after crossover, because there's more than one opportunity to take a bite of this apple.
Yes, and also we do also have an opportunity in a different way if we want to contact the our own legislators when this goes to the floor. So there is another opportunity to, prior to that, to contact I mean, you can contact all the legislators, but the only ones who are even possibly going to listen to you are if you're their constituent, and express your concern. So that you do have another opportunity. It may not be as powerful as RTS, but it's a collective effort. And yes, I saw anybody who doesn't have access to the tracker for 2026, you can put it in the chat. I'm keeping a list, or you can just send me an email afterwards, and I'll make sure that everybody who's on an issue team has access to the 2026 tracker and the 2025, all those folders, so that you can dig back, 2025 and 2024, so that you can dig back if the bill is a repeat, as so many of them are. Okay. All right. I'm done.
Did
Rachel,
we
I
get
have
all the
a quick
questions?
question. Do the members have like a list of all the legislators who are on like what committees? Do we have that available for them?
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to read. So, yes and no. There are some committee changes this year. The House has added two new committees, and they only have the chairs so far. We have not gotten the members, a list of the members. The Senate has made a change in at least one of its committees, and one of our interns is currently going through and updating that list because some people have resigned from the legislature and there's been some power shifts, so the chairs are different in some of the committees. So it will be substantially the same as 2025, but not exactly the same. So that is in process right now. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay.
Tell me
You
what you
are?
did.
Okay.
Let's talk about what you did. Did you looked at the other bills and
Yeah, I'm new at this part of the league's work. I previously belonged to League of Women Voters of California and did similar stuff there and et cetera. But for this, I am entirely new to the mechanics of the league's process, the tracker and so forth. I got into the 2026 tracker and just um, picked a bill and read through it. Let's see. I knew I was supposed to look at prior years. And when I went to the 2025 tracker, it had been pre-filtered, I think, to education or a different topic. And I wasn't able to unfilter it to get to the voting rights ones. And Gatel went ahead and unfiltered that for me. Once I was there, I did a search by keyword rather than by legislative sponsor. So thank you for alerting me to the idea to search for the prior similar bills that way. I also wondered, hey, wait, is each person who's working on a checklist supposed to do a different copy? And Cattell told me no, that they all go on the same one and maybe put my text in a color. So I chose Sun Devil Gold there. And I'm not all the way through it, but you can see where I did some of my previous year's research. And what else? Um,
no, it's good. Yeah, your previous year.
yeah.
Sometimes and this thing about Selena Bliss being a Republican, she's my district.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and that's a good comment about what's her benefit, what's the point of this. she's just signing on to all the other nonsense. But anyway, this is good. This is good. Yeah, sometimes when you go to a search, you kind of have to play with it. Like, use like I knew Fincham's bills were all the same, so that's why I did him. But you can play with different words. The search is the kind of search less is better. So you do checklist or not checklist. You do ballot, and no, that's too much.
Yep,
You get through math.
tabulation. Yeah,
Excuse me. And so you did good. It was good.
thank you.
Gail, tell us a little bit about your experience in doing it. I mean, did you have to spend a lot of time at it, or because being new, you're a perfect example of what once you get started, what it feels like, and time commitment and that kind of thing.
Hey, um, my experience with the Google Drive and Docs was nil, but the league had I think it was on YouTube. They had the training for that. Um, and then you wanted to know about my background in what other areas?
Now, just about your experience in completing the checklist. How difficult was it? Was it time consuming?
Okay, so I looked at it as two or maybe three different areas. One was the nuts and bolts of Google Drive and Docs. Another was the league's use of that. And then the third one is just the legislative system. So for Arizona's legislature, even though I've only been back for 2 years, I pretty much understand how that works. And as I mentioned, the training for the nuts and bolts, the mechanics of Google Drive and Google Docs, that was excellent as well. So employing it the way the league wants this done, that was um, that was what I pretty much covered today. Uh, and how much time it took. I was chipping away at this. I'd spend maybe an hour, half hour here, half hour there, email Gatel because I can't find the prior bills. So I get the impression that this is a pretty flexible time commitment. Am I right? I'm just doing what I can here, and the experienced people who know all that background that I'm still trying to pick up the prior years. Um, but I'm guessing that it's helpful. I don't know. Time commitment, I think I put in maybe 4 or 5 hours total.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say, as your experience grows and you're right, and I'm glad you highlighted the challenge of the tools, the Google Docs and the tracker and those kinds of things, and getting used to those. That was my biggest hurdle too, but I've been doing this for 4 years, so that's a little bit, it becomes less of a burden as time goes on. You get better at all of those things. So what used to take me an hour to do takes me 20 minutes now. So there's a big difference.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you
you'll
for sharing.
find,
We appreciate it.
yeah, you'll find that as you're working on it, it will get easier because you'll get used to how things are listed, and you'll notice in different, like you'll be reading the newspaper and go, oh, there's an article about it. So it'll as you do it, you get more attuned to the legislation, and then you kind of watch it, but you get used to it. I've only been doing it like 3 years, and the first year I was just like, oh, I can't do this. But I started in doing it and I was like, oh, this is fun. You can do the research, you can see what they've done before, you can Google and see what somebody else has said about it. And then, yeah, there's information out there. You just have to do it. It's like researching a term paper in college back in the day. But yeah, you did it. It's an excellent, I just tell you to keep going because it looks, yeah, you've filled out the different, and oh, yes, yeah, the Arizona legislative site, as I just read the chat from Lois. Finding resources on aid, yeah, for the agenda and the governor's letter, and yeah, there's all sorts of information. The legislative website is an excellent website. Also, although Penny doesn't like us to use this, but the chambers do summaries of their legislation. So it's always good to look at those to see what they think is important too. So, but yeah, you did an excellent job.
This is Gatel. Can I just interject again on something that you mentioned, Carol, that I think is a very important point to let everybody know, which is feel free to, I mean, we do have to recognize that there are a lot of sources out there that will have valuable information, but won't be nonpartisan in terms of how they present the
Yeah, you
information.
just have to, if you're reading
Yeah.
about, yeah, like I can't think of one offhand, but civic engagement. They're
Yes,
a great place, but
yes,
they have a bias. So you just
yes,
read it and you go, okay, that's their opinion. So you
right,
go from there.
right. But
Sometimes you can use it, sometimes you can't.
yeah, and if you find articles that are well thought out and just, factual about a particular issue or a particular set of bills, what I do and what I encourage other people to do is we have folders called ancillary materials for all of the issue teams. If you see something, or I guess you just put it in with the bill in the bill folder, if you see some substantive research piece from either a think tank or a newspaper that you think other people would benefit from reading, just put it in there. I mean, we don't have a way to push it out to tell everybody in the issue team it's there, but feel free to share any of this sort of these secondary resources that you found to be valuable.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So,
Yeah, another key resource for all of us is our experienced interns. Both Keisha and Emma are fabulous resources,
oh, definitely,
not only
yeah,
for content of the bills, but for the functioning of all of the support pieces, the tracker. Keisha's an expert on Google Docs. So's Emma. I mean, if I get myself, I've gotten myself painted into a corner more than once, and um, they help me figure out what I'm doing. So there's even the committees, your education committee, all of the committees, they have you all are resources to each other, and it's completely a collegial environment, and we collaborate to the league.
yeah. We all discuss it because we might know somebody might have a different opinion also, and then you can discuss. Uh, you might support the bill and the league, so it's very much a collaborative effort, and I encourage everybody to give it a try. We definitely need some analysis on some of the bills. So, like I said, some of them, the four that are coming up before us on the 14th, I think is what it was. Anyway, those have all been done before, so we can go back and see 2025 and say, oh, he's done this before. We're going to cut and paste and kind of update some of the information and move on because there's going to be another one that's a new one, and so then we'll have to analyze that. Wendy Rogers, she has one she introduced last year, and Fincham, as you can see, did them over and over and over again. So, and this is like a combination. I think Bliss, as you can tell, did this before. So you can see what we argued against before. I'm always, it's always interesting to me what they want to do and their justification. So it's just amazing. But anyway, so does anyone have any other questions?
I do want to add something quickly. I love that Gail used comments, which is what we use quite often since we do work in teams.
Mhm.
That way we can maybe point out something, and the way to do that is to highlight the text and to click this box here, add comment, and that is the way to encourage feedback or, if you have any questions about what someone wrote down, that's a great tool. And as everyone mentioned, there are a lot of resources that you will receive, I think, in the slide deck and as well on our YouTube channel, LWV Arizona. We have a lot of videos on how to do Google Drive things and the tracker and the checklist. So if you need that extra reminder, just ask one of us, email the LWVAZ advocacy Gmail, or yeah, review the slides.
Think we're done with the training. I hope it made sense to everybody. It's pretty cut and dry. You just, you know, read, read and analyze, and then combine and uh, give your opinion. We can read the league position. That's also
One of the best ways is to jump in and give it a
just jump in and start to work. Read the league position because in
try
case you don't know, yeah, you have to have the league. Make sure you know
with us.
the league position. So
Yeah, I would recommend reading that first before you add
yes.
any bills to the tracker because a lot of the bills we won't have a position on, so it sometimes doesn't make sense to track them.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good point. There's
Mhm.
some that there's a one that says we're just watching, and so yeah, we don't want to waste our time on those because we don't have a position like moving the primary. That's one of the bills. The league doesn't have a position on whether to move it or not, so we're just kind of watching on that one. So
Yeah, and there's already hundreds of pre-filed bills already, so we definitely want to use our resources and our people where we can.
definitely, yeah.
Any last best practices or lessons learned from Gail or Carol or anyone?
I was just wondering, Tina, would you mind if we called on you since you're an issue team lead and have been for a while? Is there anything that you would like to add to this from your perspective?
Hang on. Oh, there I am. Let me just. Gosh, I'm going to be honest with you. I watched the other two meetings this morning because, like everybody, there's so much going on, and I was like, oh, I need to get my head in the analysis space. I think the trainings have been excellent. The ones that I watched this morning, they were so good. You guys have done such a good job on the training, first of all. Um, I think that, sorry, I'm trying to get to a gallery view where I can actually see people. I think that just good communication. I know from our team perspective, it's hard to get everybody together on a call at one time. So I generally try to do an initial team call with people, but we have typically done a lot through email, just emailing each other and the comments, like you said, helping each other out with comments on the calls to action. So with the legislative tracker, I know errors can be made often on that. That's why I was asking about, do you want one person doing it? Um, so I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, that's helpful. I mean, for people who've never done this, it's hard to really get a feel for how, okay, I want to work on this issue. Now what
Mhm.
happens?
I
Who
mean,
am I
that like
going to?
everybody has said, the first year that you're doing it, it,
Yeah,
it seems overwhelming. It
yeah.
seems like a lot. So don't beat yourself up because you're going to learn a lot, and each year you'll learn more. And it's just really a great way to understand the legislature, and how it works, and to help other people understand how it works. So just, I would say, ask questions of your team leads if you have them. There's no dumb question. Everybody's been there. Every year I have to kind of reset myself and go, okay, how does this work again? I've been doing this 3 or 4 years, but yeah, it's,
I know
it's
it's like
important work. It's important work. And it's also just, I think, so important for people to understand how it works. And you will really understand the system after you've done this work.
Yeah, yeah. And I think to pivot off your point, even if you're not quite ready to dive in and analyze a bill, just, come to a meeting, follow the thread of emails.
Hmm.
If you have any subject matter expertise in that area, maybe you can contribute something from that perspective. Maybe you can do a little research as needed. Just,
Hmm.
hover at the periphery until you're ready to do actual bill analysis. And some people are never really want to do that, but they're invaluable anyway to the issue teams because they need a lot of support.
Right. And when you are hearing and learning these things, whether you're analyzing the bills or you're just part of the team, you're sharing that information with people around you too. And explaining, did you know that this bill was coming up? And like, so there's a lot of benefit no matter what part of the work that you do.
Yeah, it's very rewarding. I found it to be very rewarding because then you see Cindy's testimony, and then you see the call to action, and you say, "I did that. I did that. I figured that out." So yeah, it's very rewarding. Like I said, the first time you do it, it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is too much." But you just keep working on it, and it'll get easier. It just because it's the same thing. It's the same nonsense with their voter suppression and that sort of thing. Now, there are bills we support, like there's one about registration, same day registration, that sort of thing. But we don't do a lot of analysis on those because we know that 9 times out of 10 they won't even go to committee. They won't go to committee. So, but there are bills that we support, so we're not all negative.
After the meeting, you're all going to be getting an email with some of the slides, with all of the links, and a pitch to join an issue team. Just reply to the email, and we will get you set up. I think that will work for everybody. And to the question earlier, also about the lead positions and where to find them. Someone answered that question that they're right on the checklist, but also know that there are, and I think it will be on the last slide, we have quite a few resources. I'll wait for Emra to get there. Oh, well, okay. Keep going, Emra. I'll wait till you're ready. Okay, so that slide, which when you get a PDF of the slides, and there won't be many slides, these will all be live links, but it's broken up by like the public policy positions. And for those of you who are new to this, we usually look first to the AZ public policy positions, but if we don't have one or if it's not very robust, then we can look to the US public policy positions, which is the impact on issues. We can work with either one of those. And education is actually a great example of, we had a very limited education public policy position for a number of years on the AZ side. And a couple of years ago, there was a concerted effort that went through the whole public policy study process. And we have an incredibly extensive education public policy position. We never need to go beyond that one. I can't imagine the US one is not nearly as robust as ours is, but you can always use both of those. And the last category, the League Legislative Analysis Resources, those are all kinds of things that you can look at to help you navigate the process.
And don't forget that you can contact any one of us. I'd be more than willing to chat with anybody. If you're stuck doing something, I'd be more than happy to help on a one-on-one basis as well. So as far as I'm concerned, you can contact me directly or go through the LWAZ advocacy website and they'll refer to me. Also, these are the issue teams that's on the screen now. And if you're interested in any one of these, including leading one of your own with climate and water, there's lots of opportunity. Tina just talked a little bit about what her education team's doing. We have criminal justice. Marcia's on the call, and she may have some input as well, but that group is getting going. And then one person, one vote is a folk that's going to be focusing on education more than it's going to be on legislation. And Lois is on the call, and so is Tina. I don't know if Kathy's on the call or not. And that group's just becoming an educational piece at this point. So that's what's available.
I just want to correct something because I think I made that mistake. The co-lead on the one person, one vote is Bonnie Jackson, not Lois Hanson. And I will fix that.
Oh, okay.
I must have had Lois in my head. Sorry, Lois, I had you in my head and I think I made a mistake. Okay. Anything else or?
If there are any last questions,
We must have done a wonderful job. We have no questions.
Or everybody's stunned, absolutely stunned into silence.
Thank you, everyone, for your attention, your participation. And
And
we
do-
look forward to this
Yeah.
legislative year. It's going to be a big year. It's an election year. It's going to get us positioned. It's going to be an active legislative issue. Carol said it, Gattell said it, Amber said it. We're going to see a lot of the same bills. There's been conversations in the news media that the legislature is going to really focus on putting the spotlight on the governor's race. And this year we're going to have a lieutenant governor position that was passed in one of our ballot measures a couple of years ago. So it's going to be an interesting election year, but the legislature, they're all vying for position. You know, we flip over the legislature every 2 years. And so that makes our work even that much more interesting because everybody wants to come in and put their stake in the ground about what they stand for. And it's going to be interesting. So we need all the help we can get. Thank you for participating.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to end the recording and I think we're done. You know where to reach us if you need to. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.